All right, today we're tackling a fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty controversial idea. We're going to explore a perspective that raises a really pointed question about consciousness, control, and the law. So let's dive right in. This is the big question, the one at the very heart of the source material we're looking at. It sets up a real paradox, doesn't it? You have this substance, alcohol, that's completely woven into our social fabric. And then you have these ancient, often sacred plants on the total opposite side of the law. So let's unpack the argument for why that might actually be the case. To even start to answer that question, the argument draws a really sharp line in the sand. It distinguishes between two fundamentally different states of mind. It calls the awakened mind and the pacified mind. Let's break down what it means by that. So on one hand, you've got what's called the pacified mind. The idea here is that alcohol kind of numbs you out, you know? It creates a passivity that makes a person more compliant, maybe a little easier to lead. But then you have the awakened mind. This is what these ancient plants are said to stimulate. And this state, it's all about questioning things, especially authority, and fostering a sense of independence. According to this argument, these aren't just slightly different moods. They're two fundamentally opposed ways of being.
And this quote, wow, it really gets to the core of it. From this perspective, an awakened mind isn't just different. It's seen as a direct threat. This ability to think for yourself, to not just blindly follow the herd, that's presented as something that could seriously destabilize the established systems of control.
Okay, so let's peel back another layer. This is where the argument connects this whole idea of mental states directly to our economic system. It basically sets up a huge conflict between the engine of consumerism and a genuine sense of inner fulfillment. The logic presented by the source unfolds in a few steps. First, it claims these plants can help people connect with themselves on a much deeper level. Okay, so then a person who feels whole and connected inside, well, the argument is they feel less of a nagging need to fill some void with external things, products, entertainment, whatever. And that is a direct threat to the bottom line of industries built on endless consumption. We're talking alcohol, pharmaceuticals, advertising, the whole shebang. So the conclusion is that these plants are in direct conflict with the system's economic goals. And it all boils down to this incredibly stark idea. From this point of view, a system that needs constant growth can't really afford a population that's truly content. If a filled person is just not a good customer, they simply don't buy enough stuff to keep the wheels turning. So, if these plants are seen as such a threat, what does the system supposedly gain by pushing alcohol instead? This next part of the argument lays out the alleged benefits for the established order. And here's the crucial point the source makes. This isn't an accident. It's a feature, not a bug. From this viewpoint, alcohol is the perfect tool for maintaining the status quo. It's said to dull critical thinking and instead just encourages us all to participate in the consumer cycle. To forget, not to awaken. This table really breaks down the specific gains the system allegedly gets. Economically, well, it's pretty obvious. A massive trillion-dollar alcohol industry that profits directly. Then there's the health side. The argument is that the health problems tied to alcohol just fuel more consumption in the pharmaceutical industry. And finally, there's the control aspect. A population dealing with increased dependency and depression is seen as just plain easier to manage and manipulate. The argument also tries to zoom out and put this in a bigger historical picture. It suggests this isn't some new phenomenon, but that it's actually part of a long history of suppressing independent wisdom. Think of figures like shamans or entire indigenous cultures whose spiritual connection existed totally outside of formal institutions. That kind of independence, the source claims, has always been seen as a threat to centralized power. So as we start to bring this all together, the argument really presents us with what it frames as a fundamental choice, a fork in the road between two very, very different paths. And this slide lays out the two paths in stark contrast. On one side, you have the path of alcohol, which is framed as something that disconnects you from yourself, narrows your heart, and ultimately creates dependency. But on the other side, there's the path of sacred plants, presented as a route to inner truth, opening your heart to nature and fostering real transformation. The source positions them not just as different choices, but as opposing ways of being. And this quote, it's really the mic drop of the whole argument. It proposes that the ultimate reason these plants are forbidden is their potential to create truly conscious individuals. And conscious people, from this point of view, they can't be managed. They shift from being, in the source's own words, slaves to a system, to becoming creators of their own reality. And so we end right where we began, with a really big question. The source material leaves us to ponder this. Is the way we decide what's illegal and what's illegal a reflection of true freedom and protection? Or is it, as this argument suggests, a calculated plan designed to keep us pacified, consuming, and ultimately blind? The answer, according to the source, is yours to find.